collecting information around the world is critical to keeping America safe. We must continue to do so, but there must be limits to that collection. We've got to make certain that we do not abuse or destroy our relationship with key allies.
We have always eavesdropped on people around the world, but the advance of technology has given us enormous capabilities, and I think you might make an argument that some of these capabilities has been very offensive to us and to our allies.
But I think the president should stop apologizing, stop being defensive. The reality is the NSA has saved thousands of lives, not just in the United States, but also in France and Germany and throughout Europe. And we're not doing this for the fun of it. This is to gather valuable intelligence, which helps not just us, but also helps the Europeans.
Obama administration continues to face heavy criticism from European leaders and certain members of Congress over its surveillance programs. And Dominic's got the latest. And Dominic, it's interesting. Democrats have seemingly raised more hackles over this than Republicans like Pete King, Rogers, etc., who have said, hey, not only have we always done this here, but it keeps Americans safe.
Well, the very latest is the director of the NSA and the nation's top intelligence chief testified before the House Intelligence Committee. They said they'd rather apologize for the surveillance program than apologize for another attack. Today, the nation's top intelligence officials went before Congress to defend the sweeping surveillance programs that have the Obama administration under fire.
We do not spy on anyone except for valid foreign intelligence purposes.
We would rather be here telling you why we defended these programs than having given them up and have our nation or our allies be in attack.
The pressure on the Obama administration over these secret programs continues to grow, but today one small bit of vindication. Over the last week, there was outrage in France and Spain after reports there said the NSA swept up millions of phone calls in those countries. But today, the NSA director confirmed a report in the Wall Street Journal that it was actually French and Spanish intelligence agencies that did the surveillance and then passed it on to the NSA. But there is still outrage among U.S. allies over the NSA monitoring of 35 world leaders. President Obama says he didn't know about that until this summer, and now he's ordered a complete review of the spy programs.
We need to look at and make sure that we are not just gathering intelligence because we can, but we're gathering it because we need it.
The pressure over these programs is not just coming from European capitals, but also from right here at home. Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein said she's launching a congressional review of the nation's intelligence gathering, a significant move from an Intelligence Committee chair that stood with President Obama and the NSA. The intelligence officials told Congress today that allies spy on each other. It's a fact of the business. But, Richard, that doesn't mean that these reports haven't done some major damage.
Thank you, Dom. When you were among what the committees you served on was Homeland Security, right? What is the role of Congress in this, and what's the reality about what we've done and what we do?
I chaired the National Security Subcommittee of Government Oversight, and I knew a lot more based on that. First off, we spy on businesses overseas. That's not secure information. We spy on leaders. We spy on our allies. We spy on our enemies. And they do it to us. And with all due respect, who knows what Germany does? And if they had the capability, there'd be no doubt in my mind what they'd do. So what's embarrassing is that it's become public. And what's surprising is if some members didn't know that this was happening, and they shouldn't necessarily know, isn't it surprising that Snowden knew? This guy, how did he ever get the clearance that he got? So, I mean, it's tremendously awkward. But the thing that bothers me more is that leaders who tell us things, now we kept a record of it, and now it's public. So when Middle East countries say, don't go into Iraq, do this, do that, and then they publicly have to deny it, what are they going to tell us?
Can you make the distinctions, though? Because what came out today was we followed communications, but we didn't record communications, specifically Angela Merkel's calls. And they also said,
Well,
and by the way, we're not the ones, implying somebody else were the ones, who recorded, who at least followed her conversations, meaning another ally did, they gave it to us. It just further muddies here what's really going on, that we're starting to get just an inkling of how many people do this.
We would record whatever we thought was valuable. Really what they're saying is we're not going to record the personal stuff, but we record.
Should we be doing world leaders? I understand it shouldn't stop at the nation's shores, but should we, world leaders, prime ministers, should we be recording their conversations?
Well, I just hope that our leaders recognize that everything they say could be public unless they're very careful, and could be known by both our friends and our enemies. And let's have the maturity to know it. And you know, I would be surprised if she didn't know that some things that she says we would know about.
From a messaging standpoint, Jonathan, what was confusing to me was you had the White House, Jake Carney goes out a few days ago and says, we will not be doing this going forward. He made it clear if you looked at the tensing of this. He didn't say what they did in the past, but he said we're not and won't be recording this. Dianne Feinstein, Senator Feinstein, comes out and says that basically she got assurances. The same night, the White House puts out a statement saying the senator doesn't speak for the White House, meaning we still may, if we deem appropriate, record foreign leaders' conversations. It's a mixed messaging going on here. Either you say, I'm sorry, it's not the pretty part of the real world here, but that's what we're going to do, or you say, we're not going to do this going forward. But again, they want this thing both ways.
I think the administration has a problem here. I think that they need to just come out, similar to what the congressman said. I think they need to not apologize. They do this. They do it for good reason. In a post-9/11 world, people are okay with a little bit more government if it's going to make them feel safer out there. And I don't think they did anything wrong. And I think Angela Merkel even came out and said, oh, you know, it's okay type of thing. I know the Americans. Why? Because she understands the importance of having the United States as an ally, as somebody there to stand beside them when they need us. And so does the rest of the world.
Let me just jump in and say, we recorded some things that we could get access. She has ways to communicate where we can't get access.
But today, there's no bright lines in this. It's shades of gray. The administration, apparently, the president, said we're no longer, we're going to put curbs on basically NSA surveillance of UN headquarters. So now all of a sudden we're not going to do anything on the UN, but we're still going to go after world leaders if they're not sitting in the UN, but if they're sitting in, you know, Bonn or wherever else around the world. What's the rule? What's not the rule?
I think the congressman would know, but really the NSA has certain extraordinary abilities that they're entitled to that are above our constitutional rights. And I think that the president said what he needed to say to I guess, reach out to allies and say, oh, you know, okay, we did something here and we're going to look to change things. Doesn't mean it's going to happen.
The implication was the president didn't know this program was going on. What's worse, him knowing and doing it and giving the inference that we weren't recording, or not knowing?
Well, what I thought about was, if he didn't know, obviously there was information. There was no information that he needed to know, which strikes me. Then why the heck were we doing it? But you know,
wouldn't it be in these daily briefings every morning?
The president gets. President Clinton chose not to get these briefings, but most presidents have daily briefings, and they're not that long, but they're very succinct, very well done, and people spend a lot of time doing it. I'm surprised that he didn't know, unless there was nothing ever discussed on the phone that they thought he should know about.
You know, Dominic, the one thing that came out through all of this conversation in the last 4 or 5 days, it's all about 9/11. It's still all about 9/11. Everything that's come out of that. I mean, people a generation from now, they're going to think about, forget about just Afghanistan and Iraq, the Middle East. Our whole issue of debate between privacy and protection, surveillance, how much authority government does or doesn't have over our, basically, our intellectual, or whatever our communications or property is. It is all still all about 9/11, no matter if it's direct or tangential, but it's about everything, isn't it?
But it has to be, Richard. And there, I believe the American people will stand behind this president or any president to support these types of activities if it means that there won't be another 9/11 in this country.
And the guy said as much today, saying, I'd rather apologize to you later about a program
That's the bottom line.
that I went too far than if I didn't connect
But I have to admit, though, I think that we're offending. I respect what you're saying, Congressman, but I think we're offending allies that we may need, and these allies may be a bit turned off or offended.
I don't think they're offended that we did it. I think they're offended that it was public and that we didn't have the capability when we did it to not make sure that other people knew about it.
But you know, Congressman, I do wonder, under President Bush, George W. Bush, if Snowden would still be a free man. I really wonder that.
We're going to continue this conversation on the other side of the break. Stay with us.